Hello and welcome. My name is Jason Lane. I serve as a professor of higher education and international education at the University of Illinois. I also serve as the co-director of the Cross-Border Education Research Team, or CBERT, which has studied transnational higher education for more than 15 years. Today, on behalf of my co-authors, Jessica Schueller and Christine Farrugia, I'll explore how the traditional concept of the definition of international student is being challenged by the rise of transnational higher education, where both students and institutions themselves could cross borders. Here are the two citations for the publications on which much of this talk is based. So let's start with the idea of an international student. Today, approximately 7 million tertiary students move to another country to pursue their studies each year. Historically, an international student was defined as someone who crosses a national border to study. They leave their home. They go to another university in another country. Definitions typically rely on concepts of nationality, visa status, or physical location. This binary between international and domestic has worked better, though still not perfectly, when institutions were immobile. But as you'll see, that's changing. Now, T&E essentially allows the student to pursue an education from an institution without having to travel to that institution's home country. This might mean a student can pursue a foreign education while remaining in their home country by going to the branch campus, or a student may travel to a third country where they're not from and where the institution's not from to pursue education from that provider. Forms of T&E include branch campuses, franchise models, dual degrees, online programs, or binational universities. Now, the expansion of T&E has been rapid. A few years ago, working with Observatory for Borderless Higher Education, we at CBERT estimated that there were at least 180,000 students studying at 300 international branch campuses globally. And that's only branch campuses. It doesn't represent the other forms of T&E. In fact, you can go and see the current list of IBCs on our website at cbert.org. But a question arises. When the institution crosses borders, but the student doesn't, what is an international student? Or when they both cross borders, what's a domestic student and what's an international student? This presentation and our work is based on a particular subtype of T&E, the International Branch Campus. It's defined, or we define it, as an entity that is owned at least in part by a foreign higher education provider. It's operated in the name of the foreign education provider, provides an entire academic program substantially on site, and leads to a degree awarded by the foreign education provider. Examples might include NYU in Abu Dhabi, University of Wollongong in Dubai, the University of Nottingham with campuses both in Malaysia and in China. These institutions complicate how we classify students. This ad from the University of Nottingham in Malaysia aptly illustrates the changing dynamics that we're dealing with. Here, they point out that they were ranked as Malaysia's #1 UK university. Again, what's fascinating is that this is a UK university operating in Malaysia, and that there are more than one such institution, so that it enables the opportunity to rank which of UK's institutions in Malaysia might be considered #1. So what happens when both students and institutions cross borders? How does this help us problematize or better understand what is or is not an international student? The mobility of both institutions and students blurs traditional categories. Let's consider 3 students at the University of Nottingham Malaysia campus. 1, a local Malaysian student. For them, the setting is familiar, but the education system is foreign. A UK student, the same national education system, but they're learning in a different geography and cultural context. Finally, a Chinese student. For them, the geography and culture is foreign, as is the educational student. Would you consider them international or domestic? It probably depends on your lens. My co-authors and I propose a 2x2 typology to better understand the transnational education student. Along the vertical axis, you see the home campus perspective, whether or not they might view the student as domestic or international. Along the horizontal is the IBC perspective, and they too, how they might see the student as international or domestic. This framework recognizes 4 primary archetypes of students at IBCs. Now, let's walk through them. boundary spanner is viewed as domestic from both the IBC and the home campus perspective. They may hold dual citizenship or long-term residency in the host country while maintaining citizenship ties to the home country of the institution. They have a lived experience, cultural familiarity, or linguistic proficiency aligned with both countries. They often function as a cultural or institutional translator, helping peers and faculty navigate the cross-border expectations. And their dual positioning allows them to move seamlessly between institutional and national frameworks, but it may also obscure some of their specific support needs. Staycationers. Now, they're viewed as domestic from the IBC perspective, but international from the home campus perspective. This is a student who remains in their home or resident country to pursue a degree from a foreign institution operating locally, seeking an international academic experience without engaging in geographic mobility. Considered domestic from the home country or IBC perspective, but international from the home campus viewpoint. It includes citizens, long-term residents, or undocumented individuals in the host country with no formal affiliation to the institution's home country. They could be motivated by access to a foreign credential, global teaching style, career advantage, while avoiding the costs or barriers of physical relocation. Their educational experience blends the familiar cultural environment of the home with the foreign academic structure of the institution. The pass-through student is a student who enrolls in an international branch campus affiliated with their home country while studying abroad. They're seeking a familiar academic environment in a foreign setting, often as a temporary step before returning home and moving onward. They're considered domestic by the home campus and international by the IBC. They often choose the IBC due to the easier access, reduced competition, or logistical convenience compared to enrolling at the home campus. They may engage minimally with the local culture, treating the host country as more of a transient space rather than a destination. And they view the IBC as a pathway to a credential, a global resume boost, or a stepping stone to further their mobility. An explorer is a student who pursues an education from a foreign institution in a third country, having no prior affiliation with either the home country of the institution or the host country where the campus is located. They're considered international from both the home campus and IBC perspectives. They may choose the IBC for reasons such as academic reputation, regional opportunity, or cost and access advantages. They often experience multiple layers of cultural adjustment, academically, socially, geographically. They embody a truly global learner, internationally seeking a transnational experience that is distinct from both their home context and the institution's origin. Now that we've reviewed the four archetypes, here again is the full typology. So whether we're talking about a dual citizen navigating both systems, a local student seeking global credentials from home, a student on a temporary academic layover, or a trailblazer crossing multiple borders, this typology helps us rethink what it means to be an international student, particularly in the age of transnational higher education. And, as we'll explore next, these distinctions matter deeply for student services, for policy, for research, and for how we imagine the future of global learning. How we define international students isn't just a matter of semantics. It has real-world consequences. Traditional definitions often miss students in transnational programs, leaving whole populations invisible to our data. The invisibility affects policy decisions, funding allocations, and the kinds of support services that these students receive. It also skews our research and reporting, shaping an incomplete picture of global mobility. Getting the definitions right ensures that all students are counted, supported, and included in the conversation about international education. Transnational higher education and our papers invite us to move past the idea that mobility is only about students crossing borders. In today's world, institutions themselves are mobile, delivering programs across countries and cultures. This shift challenges the nation state as the primary way that we define international, encouraging us to see mobility through a more flexible, pluriversal lens. By doing so, we can understand the realities of students whose educational journeys span multiple places and identities, and in turn design systems that truly reflect the global nature of learning. As we think about implications for practice, the first step is recognizing that transnational higher education challenges the old dichotomy of domestic versus international. Many of our students today have hybrid affiliations, cultural fluidity, multi-sided academic experiences that aren't captured by traditional labels. This means our admissions and our advising and orientation process, and even our research, needs to evolve. We also need better data. And current reporting often overlooks T&E learners, so that we should refine how we track students using categories like boundary spanners, staycationers, pass-throughs, and explorers to better inform funding, accreditation, and policy decisions. And speaking of funding, existing models tied to physical mobility can exclude these students. We have to rethink tuition structures, scholarships, government support to reflect the reality of cross-border education. And finally, we must strengthen the services and awareness within our institutions. T&E students have a unique academic, cultural, and career needs that often require more flexible, cultural sensitive support. Faculty and staff also need training to understand this complexity and foster inclusive teaching and collaboration. And in short, our systems must adapt so that all T&E learners can thrive. In closing, transnational higher education is reshaping how we understand mobility and what it means to be an international student. The old nation-state definitions no longer capture the full picture. Institutions themselves are mobile, and students navigate identities that cross borders in complex ways. To keep up, our definitions, our systems, and our support structures must evolve. Only then can we ensure that all learners in T&E settings are visible, supported, and fully included in the global education and research conversations. Thank you.